Hi, Michael. It's so good to be here with you after your big second anniversary event. I'm sorry I couldn't be there, but I do hope, hopefully, for year three, I can be there and my kids won't have sports conflicts. But I want to hear how it went. I want you to tell me all about it.
So it was a lot of fun. We were able to kind of keep the community vibe, which I was always concerned about, because year one I was left with, oh my gosh, the audience made the event, right? As somebody puts on an event, you can control the agenda, the speakers, the facilities, but you really can't control the audience. And the audience came
Right.
through again. It really does have kind of a family feel. People networking. We had 6 hours of networking, and I had to kick them out because we had very hard time frames. So that was really good. Um, we learned from year one. So the chairs had cushions this year. We paid extra for cushion chairs because it's the little things, right? It's the little
Yes.
things. And people really like the food. Again, I paid for food for everyone this year just to make it more efficient and allow people to network. So I am super excited to get it done and in the books.
Good, good. Putting on an event is a big deal. People don't realize how much work goes into it behind the scenes and how exhausting it is and rewarding, of course, but there's so much that goes into it. So I know that that was very rewarding for you and worth all the hard work for sure.
Oh, absolutely. And talk about not knowing what it takes out of you. I woke up yesterday, Monday, to do my normal thing for the last 3 decades, right? I wake up early, no alarm clock. I start reading the financial news. But yesterday, for the first time, probably in 3 decades, I woke up, started doing it, and I felt like my head was going to hit the table. And I'm like, I got
Wow.
to go back to bed. This is crazy. And then I didn't wake up until like 2 o'clock in the afternoon or something.
That's great. That's great. It's good when you've worked so hard, your body says, I'm done. Take a
Yeah,
nap.
I'm out.
No
I
choice.
got you through the event, but now it's my
Oh,
turn.
oh. Well, what were your favorite takeaways? What were the things that were most impactful for you and then for the community?
I would love to hear from the audience who watches this, because I actually took the time to list each speaker and my personal takeaways. So I'd love to hear from the audience watching this. What were your takeaways? I'll go in the order because I think one of the things I tried to do is put together an order where things kind of built on themselves. And we started day one and frankly day two with a couple. So day one, we had Matt, the lumberjack landlord, who's been on the channel for 4 or 5 years,
He's
and his
great.
lovely wife, Ashley.
Oh, good.
And yeah, and Ashley really led the conversation, really highlighted how she came into the relation. Ashley's 8 years younger than Matt. He was 28, she was 20, and he was already on this journey, and she had to catch up. When they were together, she talked about that she didn't even have a checkbook, right? So she
Oh,
was living
wow.
at home with her parents and all of that. So she really talked about Matt's vision casting, really showed her why sacrifices for, let's call it a decade, would reward her with an amazing life. They
Mhm.
decided to wait on having kids for a couple of years so they could, get past the first 5 years of suck,
Right.
which was great. They told funny stories. Like one time, Ashley was, taking over more of the responsibilities, and she paid all the bills. Unbeknownst to her, there wasn't enough money in the account, so that started a frantic event to figure out how they could, cover the overdraft. Uh,
Hmm.
so they talked about improving the process and communication and all of that. Um, but yeah, it was fun to start with couples. I think I'll do that each and every year because so many
Yeah.
people in this game come to this with one spouse or one significant other, not quite in the same space.
Right.
Uh, but if you can get there, and you could get the same vision or have the vision evolve to the other party, so it is truly your collective vision.
Right.
I think that was so powerful for Matt and Ashley to lead us off.
Yeah, that's so important. I years ago I led first I went through and then I led Dave Ramsey's Financial Peace University, and they talked about how to at that point, and it's still the same today, more couples cite money as the reason that they divorce than anything else, because they're not on the same page. It's either this is mine, this is yours, or that's your business, this is my business. And if they don't have that collective vision, you know, where you said Matt was vision casting for their family that says, hey, this is going to be hard and we got to make sacrifices. It's really difficult to maintain, you know, happy couples when you're not on the same page about where your money goes and how it's spent. So I love that. I think it's really important. And we, as, you know, people that are well known in real estate, they see us, they don't see our spouse, but we couldn't have done it. I think you would say the same thing without our spouse's help and getting on board, regardless of, you know, who kind of started it or took the reins.
Yeah. And again, it really showed just the reality, to your point, that it's all not, you know, rainbows and unicorns. It does take time. There are mistakes, but as long as you are communicating and in this together, you know, you come out of it as a strong couple. You know, Ashley and Matt's relationship is amazing, 4 kids, and they're enjoying it. So there's a lot more in that talk, I'm sure, that other people will put below. But I'll go next up with Omar El Takari, a friend of mine in Vegas. He grew a podcast from 0 to 100,000 subs, all long form content in under a year. He was part of the Think Media team where he did some camera reviews and stuff like that. But he really laid it on the line for a lot of new channels, right? In my audience, probably 20 or 25% of the audience either has or are starting a channel. And he's like, guys, in the beginning, nobody's going to watch. So don't overcomplicate things. He came out as far as to say, don't edit videos, go live, right? Get the repetition, get practice. He shared that the phone is a great camera. There's nothing wrong. He actually shouted out the uneducated economist who has a channel of 150,000 subs. All he has is a phone. He records from his car.
Wow.
And he's like, that's all good. In the beginning, his advice is to niche down, right? Go smaller. Don't be broad in the beginning. Go find something that you could talk about for free for a long time, and just talk about the stuff that you love. And I thought that was excellent advice from Omar.
That's really, really good too. You know, I know from, you know, kind of creating a brand, you really want to have your avatar. And if your avatar is too broad, you miss both, you know, you miss the people on this side and on this side, because it might be too much detail for people that are not, you know, detailed or experienced, or not enough for people that, you know, have some experience. And so you've really got to kind of say, like, who is my target audience, and really speak to that audience, and then just continue to, you know, bring them things at their level and what they need to and want to hear. So I think that's great advice.
Yeah. Next up, we had Dion. Again, Dion is what he calls himself, the lazy landlord. I think that's a play on words. He's just efficient. He knows what he wants and he knows what he doesn't. And again, he talked about his binder strategy. Lazy is a choice, but really the takeaway from Dion is, and always has been, design your life around your portfolio, right? If you can have the life you want with 10 units, stop at 10. You know, don't chase the 100, the 1,000, whatever. Don't chase social media. Just know thyself, know what you want, go get it. And you know, when you win the race, stop. You know, that was the big takeaways.
Yeah, that's really important too. I probably would say it just a little bit differently, designing your portfolio around your life, which I know is what he's saying. You know, he's like, okay, what kind of life do you want to live? And then that's, you know, the kind of portfolio you should build. And it sounds simple, but I can't tell you, Michael, how many people have contacted me to say, okay, I want you to teach me to buy a 400 unit apartment building, right? And they own 2 houses. And I'm like, okay, why? Tell me why. What do you really want? Well, bigger is better. Everybody says it's easier. And I'm like, no. It's not easier. Once you get the experience and you get the skill set, it becomes as quick to buy a large property maybe as it does a small one. But I can tell you, much more moving parts, much more complex, more investors, SEC, big property management companies. You know, you're dealing with other people's money, and that comes with a lot of stress that, quite frankly, a lot of people didn't realize, didn't sign up for, and they find themselves miserable because they're buying the wrong kind of thing. Or even if it's small scale properties, instead of buying, you know, 10 units and putting it with a property management company because you don't like operations, you decide, I'm going to self-manage. And then you go, I hate real estate because I don't want calls at 2 a.m. Well, how about design your portfolio to be managed by someone else that takes the calls at 2 a.m. so you don't have to do it. So, I think the whole point of know what it is that you want, know what your personality is like, know what your freedom is like to you. And then you have to design not only what you buy, but how it's run to fit within the lifestyle that you want to live. And you're either going to have more time in it or more money in it. And you're going to get a little less, of one or the other in the beginning. But everybody's so individual that anyone can make real estate work for you and to better your life by bringing in extra income. But how you do it and how many you have is so important. And then not chasing the sexy idea of, I've got this number of units, and so now my life is going to be easier. Sometimes less is more, and that, I've done it small, I've done it large. I still have both large and small properties, and they all have different benefits. But yeah, design it and then be content and realize, what you're willing and not willing to give up in terms of freedom to have more.
Yeah, love that. Next up, actually, when I step back, so my audience over the last 6 to 9 months is really increasingly talking about infill development, kind of build to rent at a small scale. We've got Brandon and many others in my community doing that. A lot of people are looking at adding ADUs because that's the way to do it. So one of the things that I was actively looking for was a lender that kind of plays in new construction, because it's not common, right? There's
right.
At least none of the lenders that I have really played there. So was lucky enough to find Lending One, who kind of plays there, new construction, flip to keep, ADU, stuff like that, and more. But the idea for the audience now is, again, I introduced them at the audience or at the event. They had about a half hour to talk about it. But I need the audience to tell me how they do. Right. Yeah. Again, I've not used them yet. I've done my due diligence. I've done what I can. But a lot of people are going to be looking at them. In fact, Brandon's going to go get a quote from them to figure out if they're competitive with his local market. But, I am trying to figure out how we can provide more value and help people do more things. And it looks like, again, I'll cross my fingers for another month or so, but Lending One came through and got people excited about doing new construction and flip to keep instead of having to do BRRRR, where you have 2 loans and 2 closings and all of that. So they have a lot of, at least on paper, they have a lot of options that will help my community. But now I need to hear from the community and see how they did. So
absolutely
cautiously optimistic.
Yeah, I've heard of them. I've never used them. Most our development stuff has been larger. So we've gone through really, larger regional banks that kind of partnered with other banks behind the scenes. But, I think that there is going to be a lot of opportunity. And to your point, you've got to be careful, and you've got to, trial and error, go through, maybe kiss a couple frogs before you find the prince, in the lending world. But where there are a lot more lenders that are stepping up that are private companies, as banks have started to kind of pull back because they see an opportunity and a need for developers to be able to fund their deals, where banks, a lot of the regional banks are the ones that have done construction historically in terms of small multifamily ground up development, et cetera. And because of the amount of debt on their books and bonds on their books, a lot of them are pencils down, or they're in a holding pattern. Or, Michael, the LTV that they're going to give you might be 50, 55%, especially if you're newer. So you have to have significant skin in the game, a lot of cash, or a lot of investors, who want more return than the banks are going to charge you in interest. And so, having these lenders come out that are, a lot of them are using private equity money from big hedge funds. They're able to get really creative because they want the business and they're newer to the space. So I think there's going to be a lot of opportunity for that. And especially, I haven't done ADUs other than we've built on, an in-law suite, separate house on our property for our mother-in-law. But in a lot of areas, and I know California is starting to kind of do this a little bit, zoning is starting to kind of come around to fix the affordable housing issue and allowing ADUs. And right now there's not a lot of great lender options for that. So, I think it's great that you found, a company that's willing to do that. And I'd be interested to see as well, how your different audience members, what their experience is like if they actually use Lending One.
Yeah. Again, cautiously optimistic, solve the need, but now it's like, get the proofs in the pudding. Let's wait 30, 40, 60 days and see what my audience says. It's either going to work out as expected or it won't, and then I'll just look for somebody else. It'll be that simple.
Yeah.
Next up, after lunch, we got Lisa Sutton. Lisa Sutton is an amazing individual. She really talked about transitioning out of the rat race. She went to school, went to a lot of school. She got a law degree. She's a practicing lawyer in bankruptcy, and how she transitioned to entrepreneurship, how she leverages complementary partners. She talked about in exercise, one of her mentors is Ken McElroy. And Ken McElroy really allowed her to simplify her life because, again, she's someone that was saying yes to everything. And Ken asked her to do 3 things. I have 2 of them, and I think I got the 3rd one right, but I have my team going back to the video to see how I did. So number 1 is Ken asked her to write on a big piece of paper all the things that she's doing, all the things that are consuming her time, different businesses, boards that she was on, charities she was on, all of her activity. And then Ken asked her to circle the ones that makes her money. Right? So she did that. Second, she was asked to say, what could you see yourself doing in 10 years? And then this was from memory, and I'm not sure I got this right, so my team will tell me, is what are you passionate about? Like, what would you do, quote unquote, for free? And what she saw with that is she had to sell one of her businesses. She had to get off of several boards. And it really helped simplify her life and thus freed up more time to do what was doing those things. So Lisa Sutton's amazing. And, oh, by the way, she was 5 weeks from giving birth. So she came in and, was just a wee bit pregnant, but she came through and did it.
That's great. And it's great. She started to kind of knock down those dominoes, before that baby comes. But there's a great book called The One Thing that kind of goes along with this theme. And it's really about kind of like, what's that one thing, that if you focused on the one thing, it would kind of knock down all the other dominoes. And whether that's with your time, the biggest money maker, the biggest thing that's going to make you most excited and passionate. And then you've got to kind of, zone in on those few things and then let the other things fall or automate them, delegate them, let them go, whatever you need to do. But yes, there's so many people that are just doing too many things, Michael, and a lot of people in real estate trying to do the same thing. So I think it's really important. And if you are too busy and you are overwhelmed, to say, okay, what am I really doing and why? And let go of anything else that isn't really serving that. It kind of going back to the whole life by design concept. If your life isn't the way you want it, how do you redesign it? And The One Thing, the great book that kind of goes along with that, I'd highly recommend.
Yeah. Then the next thing I did, and I will absolutely be doing this every year going forward, I did not do it in year 1, is I recognized the community. I gave 6 awards to people in the community that they didn't know they were getting it. So these were people that have gone what I consider above and beyond. They've made introductions, they've set up calls, they show up, they comment, they're active. Good. And it was fun to recognize the people that go above and beyond. And again, I don't pay anybody, right? So these are just people that do it because they care. And it was really fun to see their surprise, their shock. And that was a highlight for me, just recognizing people in the community for being good people. So that was fun.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. I'm sure it meant a lot to them as well to be recognized and given kudos for all they've contributed.
Yeah. And then we had the surprise keynote speaker. Only 2 people knew about this. One was Olivia and one was a buddy of mine who helped me arrange it. But we had Graham Stephan come in as the keynote speaker, and he brought his YouTube ninja Alex Nava with him, and we had an hour with Graham Stephan and Alex Nava to go through finances, YouTube content, all of that, and it was fun to watch the audience line up and go, I'm going to ask him a question. So that was really cool.
Oh, that's awesome. I love that idea of a keynote being a surprise. I mean, you've got a lot of amazing speakers, so I know people are going to come anyway, but to surprise them with a big name is awesome.
Yeah, that was awesome. Again, Graham was fun. I think a couple of takeaways, one from Graham, one from Alex, because a lot of people are like, why are you so successful? And Alex was telling a story about Graham. Again, I'm going to go from memory, so forgive me if this is off, but apparently a frame is 1/24th of a second. So there's 24 frames per second. And apparently Graham is so good and so detail oriented that he could see one frame being off. So he is that much of a perfectionist, that much into his craft and loves it, that he is never satisfied till it's perfect. And that means taking out potentially 1/24th of a second to make something better. So I
Wow,
thought that
that
was an
is
amazing
detailed.
story. Yes, that is detailed. Graham also shared with the audience, because a lot of people wanted to know Graham's kind of how Graham, his schedule, or how long does it take to produce videos, because everybody sees them and they probably think it only takes them a couple of hours. But any one video from Graham Stephan on his main channel could take, on a low end, 8 hours, and potentially as high as 16 hours. So what you see is a 12 to 15-minute video. There's research, there's recording and editing.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people were blown away by just how much time goes into a single video.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. And then the last from Alex. Again, Alex had some great stories about Graham, but basically Alex was telling everyone, hey, if you spend time on the first minute, that's where you should be, right? That gets what's called watch time and stickiness. He says if that's all you can do, focus on the first minute, and then let it go. So that was a keynote from day one. And the other thing to mention is the audience had 4 hours of networking. I paid for lunch and dinner, so we didn't leave day
Awesome.
one. We started 8 a.m. We didn't leave till 8 p.m. So 12-hour day, long day.
That's awesome. That's awesome. But I know that networking time, it's so valuable. It really is. Especially, you have such a great community and you've got a school and there's opportunities to, for some interaction. But when you've got a bunch of listeners and they're all, listening and consuming the same things, to then be able to meet each other and network and form relationships. You talk about, and I talk about all the time, relationships are so important. And so it gives you, what you need to have that encouragement, and to have other people walk alongside of you. And who knows how many partnerships will come out of that as well.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah. So then we go on to day two again. Yes, I'm psychotic. I started 8 a.m. on Sunday as well. We start again with a couple. They go by the moniker PTO for Life, Suleika and Jeff. They basically have earned financial freedom doing nothing more than house hacking. They're on their 8th house hack, I believe, going to their 9th, and that's all they've done. And Suleika had some amazing stories about sharing, a single bathroom with 4 guys. She talked about, living in a space that was like 100 square feet. So again, they made all kinds of sacrifices that probably most people wouldn't make. And obviously it worked. In 7 years, they earned financial freedom and are living their best life. And it was great stories. They had pictures, they had before and afters. They talked about cash flow while living there, cash flow after. And again, it's no question house hacking is not right for everyone. But again, if I was 20 again, that's all I would do. I mean, it's that simple.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. You and I have talked a lot about, my story starting out with house hacking, and it can really change your life. And the amazing thing, I was just talking to my daughter about this week. She's in college and, we talk real estate and financial freedom with our college kids and how to do that. But, was talking about with someone else, house hacking. And it's, you can get in with 0 to 3.5% down, and oftentimes even have your closing costs covered, especially the first time, versus all your other investment properties. Generally, you're going to have to put 15 to 25% down to buy anything else. So if you can just live in it, commit to live in it for a year, and then move out and continue to upgrade. I mean, to have 8 properties in 8 years is amazing. It's more properties than most people have in a lifetime. So if you can do it while you're single or newly married and before you have kids, you can set yourself up for true freedom. Even, 10, 20 years from now, can you imagine if we had started out when we were 20 doing the same thing? It's just unbelievable how quickly that equity grows and that cash flow. And then, it gives you both sides of the equation. My, financial freedom, really easy number is live below your means while you work to expand your means. And if you're living below your means by living in it and then have rental income covering the rest of your expenses, then you move out, then you've got, multiple properties behind you, all cash flowing and building that nest egg for the future. So it is the most important, to me, and easiest way to get started in real estate.
No, again, they're such a wonderful couple, and they talked about the sacrifices and choices, but then they also showed the audience, like, this is what our life's like. PTO for Life is, paid time off, right? And they were showing, I think it was only like 7 or 9, 10 seconds of a video of like all the places they're doing it because of financial freedom. So I thought it was such a great presentation, and they're such a wonderful couple, doing it together. They're always on the same page.
That's awesome.
Shout out to them. Next up, we had Millennial Mike. He does out-of-state investing. He started with a house hack in an expensive part of the world. Let's call it Seattle. And then because it would take him forever to save up for the next down payment, he did go out of state. He's now the king of Gary, Indiana. That's where he has decided his YouTube channel is. So again, if you search real estate investing, he likes to say he won't show up in the first 100 pages of YouTube. But if you search real estate Gary, Indiana, he's like, I'm all over the first page. So again, it's just highlighting for folks that if you niche down and you own your area, great things can happen. He's talked about how he's gotten deals and financing and lead sources all from his, relatively small YouTube channel, but it's changing his life. And the last thing I'll say about Mike was he and I had a conversation very early on. And at the end of the call, he asked me, so what should I do? And I said two things. You need to network more and you need to learn seller financing. And, he is one of the handful of people that have taken my advice and just done it.
Yeah.
He learned networking and seller financing. It's really funny how many people ask us for advice. We give advice and they do nothing, or they do the opposite.
Yes.
And Mike didn't.
That's amazing. It's all about taking action, right? Because you can consume a whole lot of information and, have some knowledge about it, but without taking action, you don't see the fruit of that. It just makes you puffed up. So action takers are, so many people just consume the knowledge. They'll sign up for courses, they'll spend hundreds or thousands of dollars and then say, I'm too busy and not do it. And a lot of times it's just fear and not knowing people. So I think your two-pronged approach of, you've got to network and learn the seller financing and do it. When you start to network, you realize it can be done, and it kind of puts the fear aside a little bit and encourages people to move forward. So that's great. I love hearing stories like that.
Yeah. Next up was a surprise guest. Again, somebody's been on my channel one time, but he and I communicate on X or Twitter. His name's Tom Brickman, but he goes by the moniker Frugal Gay. And the reason I loved his story is he just did what it took. So, for example, he never made a lot of money. He worked in movie theaters, worked at the Gap, right? Retail at the Gap. But what he was able to do was basically find ways to make money. He created an eBay store where he started his journey on flipping bras. He bought a truckload of bras, and he said a truckload of bras for basically $1 each that he then resold for, I forget what it was, 25 or 30 bucks on eBay.
Wow.
And he's been doing this for years now. Anytime he needs money, he goes out and buys things. He talked about buying diesel handbags for $1 or $1.50 in Ohio or wherever he was, but then selling them to people on the East Coast and West Coast for 40 bucks each.
Oh,
so, yeah, it was such a wonderful story to hear about doing whatever it takes, not stopping, finding value where you can. He talked about mistakes. He talked about sometimes he lost money and all of that. But again, to the people out there that don't make money, it was just another example of how you can do it. Last year's example was Casey, brick by brick, starting an Etsy store. This year's story was Tom's finding unique ways to find value, selling a truckload of bras. I thought it was a crazy story.
Absolutely. And that's the thing, in this day and age, there's really no excuse for not being able to find something that you can do, to make money. I mean, when I first had kids, I sold stuff on eBay. I'd buy like Janie and Jack name brand baby clothes that they had in Houston, but they only had it like 3 or 4 stores in the country. And I'd go buy them all on clearance and I'd sell them on eBay and do the same thing. And that money allowed us to pay off debt, to get out of school debt. And so it's like everybody can find something that you can do. And I mean, if a guy can flip bras, there's no excuse that you can't find something that you can sell to make a little extra money and then, use that to pay down debt and to start, your stash for being able to go invest. So love stories like that.
Love that. And then the next 2 sessions I really put together because I didn't want it to be all about real estate. I wanted to make sure the audience left in a better space. So first up, we brought Fred up to talk about mindset. He's a pastor and a counselor and all of that. He's got all the certificates. But he really talked about mental health and gave the audience some tools to identify and help with that. And he gave permission to seek help He really was a powerful presentation. The audience loved him. They want him back next year. It was a risk for me to bring that in because it wasn't necessarily real estate oriented, but it was the right call. I knew it was the right call, and it paid off. And we will certainly be having Fred and his lovely wife Tamika back next year to just keep that going. Because sometimes it's just recognition, then it's the tools, and then it's permission to seek help. So several folks reached out. Yeah, you know what? The presentation was good because a friend of mine who I put on the Mount Rushmore, we'll get to him in a minute. He actually got in line to ask a question.
Yeah.
Right. When one of your speakers, one of the people you look up to, lines up to ask a question, you know you brought the right guy. So Fred, if you watch this, Tamika, if you watch this, he crushed it. We'd love to have you back next year.
I love that, Michael, because so many people really are struggling, especially post-COVID. People are struggling, a lack of relationships and strong relationships. The more we go into this digital world and Zoom meetings and, no more conferences. This is why it's good to get out in conferences and actually see people. But a lot of people, especially young investors, have been lacking real in-person relationships for a long time. And that does start to take a toll on you and your confidence and your communication skills and your willingness to put yourself out there. So I think it's really important to be able to say, it's okay if you're struggling, go get some help. And so I think that's wonderful.
Yeah. So after the mind, it is the body. Obviously, my audience knows that I'm on this health journey. I brought in my doctor, my personal doctor, where he shared biohacks and real food and the importance of sleep and just all the things that he has me going through. And then went on to take questions. Seemed like he was swarmed for an hour after his talk because there's just a lot of nonsense out in the media. And he went through a presentation, which again, I will actually attach to the videos once I get it. Just talking, it was 82 slides. And I'm like, dude, you're not getting through 82 slides. But he almost did. He almost did.
Good. Yeah, that's awesome. That's wonderful.
Yeah, then we go into the final two keynotes. Last year's keynote, day one, was the uneducated economist. He was such a big hit. We had him back talking about Fed speak. Talking about where the Fed's going, talking about inflation, talking about rate cuts. And he really went into the weeds of what the Fed is saying. He's one of the only individuals I know that reads all the Fed statements and rereads them and pulls them out. And he had samples and quotes. And he's like, guys, watch what the Fed is saying, right? Forget the headlines. They're telling you what we're doing if you actually read the report. So shout out the uneducated.
I need to talk to this guy. We're cut from the same cloth, right?
I like it.
So, I don't know that many people that do the same thing as me. So I'm excited to learn more about him.
I will make the introduction for you, but he's such a wonderful and giving person.
That's awesome.
He came through, and then I closed out this presentation with Jason. I mentioned him earlier with the press discussion. I've told everybody in my audience, I have 4 people on my Mount Rushmore of investors. Jason Pritchard is one of them. And we basically went through his timeline, right? He quit his job. He struggled for a year, eventually figured it out. He's done, hundreds of flips. He's owned hundreds of units. He's doing a land deal, a 70-some acre land deal. He's going to make $10 million on 17-mile drive flip. If you know Carmel, 17-mile drive, he flipped a home in there. He bought a big ass warehouse, 25 or 27,000 square feet. But the point of Jason's talk was you've got to build that muscle. We all have self-talk. We all have self-belief. We've all been indoctrinated. But the only reason Jason could go from what he's doing to flipping in Carmel or buying a warehouse or now taking on a land development deal is because he started. He created self-belief. He created an undeniable track record of being successful. And then lastly, he knows that real estate investing is an A to Z sport. But he never worried about A to Z. He only worried about B. And once he figured out B, then he went to C. And a lot of people want to know A through Z, and they never go anywhere. And Jason is that wonderful. I should not forget his lovely wife, Jen, because it is a dynamic duo that makes that happen. But yeah, building that muscle and watching the negative self-talk was such an awesome thing for people to hear.
That's great. That's great. Yeah. And it is important to be able to just take the next step. You don't have to have it all figured out, and you never will, and you're not going to remember all of it anyway till you're in it. So it's like, just take the first step, buy the first property, figure it out as you go, and then iterate as you go. And that's going to yield you much faster results than trying to learn it all and do it all and be scattered, for sure.
Yeah. And then there was a super surprise. I actually didn't know she was going to do this. Olivia, my wife, came to stage and delivered lots of thank yous and praises and all of that. But she had a message. She had a message with 2 points. One is be ethical, right? Don't take advantage of people. Don't be short-sighted. Be a good person. And then her second point was make sure the ladies, the women in your life, are educated and financially free, because there's a lot of ladies out there who get in relationships that go sideways and they're left in bad positions. So if you're a father, all that. So again, these are 2 topics that are very important to her. I didn't know she was coming to stage, but she closed it out with that message and really nailed it. So Olivia, I know you won't watch this, but if you do, thank you very much for that. So
I love that. Those 2 things are so important. We're always saying, like, you want to take advantage when there's markets that give you an advantage, but you don't take advantage of people, right? You do all things well and with integrity and seeking a win-win, and you will be blessed, and being a blessing to other people by doing it the right way. And that message, of course, as a mom and as a coach and someone who grew up in poverty and with a mother who was a battered woman, I'm telling young girls all the time, you have to be able to take care of yourself. You have to understand finances. You have to be able to build your own financial freedom, so that if anything ever does happen, to your point, in a bad relationship, an abusive relationship, a death of your spouse, there are more women in poverty than there are men, and a large percentage, I can't remember what percentage, but a large percentage, more than half, are women who are in retirement age, whose husbands passed away, and they don't have money. They don't know how to handle their money. And so it's really, really important, if you're a woman or you have a woman in your life, to make sure that they understand how to manage money and create financial freedom. It's extremely important and near to my heart. So give her kudos from me for that. And hopefully one of these days I get to meet her in person.
Oh, absolutely. Well, hopefully it's next year. Let's just throw it out in the universe that you will be at the next year's event. Again, President's Day weekend, I'm not changing it. A lot of people enjoy flying out on Monday because it's a holiday.
Yeah.
So that works for folks.
Awesome.
But the last thing I'll kind of say on this is the event, the community works. It's still growing. It's still so positive. But it also makes me realize that the school community that I've created with the same folks is the right answer. Because one thing I remember after last event was like, how do we keep this positive vibe? And that was kind of the impetus to create the school community last year. But now I just know it's the right answer, right? If you can stay engaged, it's 67 pennies a day. So it's not a cost thing for most people, but it allows you to stay around now 370 other people going the same directions. Keep that daily or weekly kind of pulse of goodness. There's 6 accountability groups, which, oh, by the way, I never show up to, but other people run. And it's just the school community is the right answer, because that allows us to keep the momentum and the positive checks while we do this yearly kind of come together as a family.
Absolutely. Love that. Love that. And you have a great community, great people in it. We've done a few Zoom calls, great questions, and I know they're taking action. And so that's wonderful.
That's amazing. Well, Anna, where can people find you besides in Vegas next President's Day weekend? Again, I'm just putting it out there.
Yes. You can find me here on your channel almost every week. And you can find me, if you're interested in real estate and financial coaching and consulting, you can find me at AnnaKellyInvesting.com and on social media at Anna Kelly, REI Mom.
Thank you so much. We'll talk next week.
Thank you. Have a good day.